Well, now take down your fishing pole and meet me at the fishing hole. I can't think of a better way to pass the time of day.
Boy, this is good tasting tuna.
RodMob. This is The Splash, your Northern California fishing podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Scott.
And I'm Sarah.
And we're coming at you from the RodMob Treehouse here in a bit cold and a wee bit wet Portola Valley. It's Friday, November 9th, and this is episode 34 of The Splash, your weekly Northern California fishing podcast.
Well, this week, of course, the big event was the presidential election, but we won't be adding to the barrage of pundits and postmortems on that. That's
for sure. Instead, we're going to talk about this week's amazing Dungeness crab opener, a very dramatic boat rescue, and lots of great striper action tops reports this week for the Delta. Let's kick things off with the latest fishing headlines for the week.
Here's Sarah with the latest headlines.
7 people were rescued from Tamales Bay on Sunday afternoon after their boat capsized. The group was on their return trip when the 25-foot boat flipped over in the turbulent waters outside the mouth of the bay. Someone at Tamales Point happened to see the boat flip over and made an emergency call. Fortunately, the Sonoma County Sheriff's helicopter crew was close by, so was able to arrive within 2 minutes of the call. They found 5 people, including a 3-year-old boy and an 11-year-old girl, clinging to the overturned hull of the boat. Sergeant Ed Honer said, "The people clinging to the boat were without life jackets. It was treacherous. The water was cold and unforgiving." The helicopter crew rescued them one by one and were told 2 more children were trapped inside the boat's cabin. The U.S. Park Service towed the boat into calmer waters, and firefighters cut into it with a chainsaw and rescued the 6- and 8-year-old children. It was a dramatic rescue, and fortunately, the 3 adults and 4 kids only had minor injuries. Well, an increase in the abundance of young juvenile cutthroat trout is being reported at Yellowstone Lake, thanks in part to a program to remove non-native lake trout over the past few years. Non-native trout were first discovered in Yellowstone Lake in 1994, and the native Yellowstone cutthroat population has been severely reduced by being preyed on by the non-native species. So, over the years, Yellowstone National Park has been removing the non-native fish. This year, they removed more than 300,000 lake trout, bringing the total to more than 1.1 million removed so far. The native cutthroat trout are showing signs of recovery. This year, the lake program's monitoring is really showing an increase in young juvenile cutthroats.
Did it say how they got the trout out of there?
The non-native trout?
Yeah.
They're pulling them out, they're netting them, and they have like a whole catching program set up where they identify the areas where they're guaranteed to get the highest catch rate. And yeah, they're getting them mostly with nets, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, there's some big fish coming out of there.
Cool.
Hey, RodMobbers, help support the show. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and leave a review.
And we've all got the stories of the one that got away. But angler Joe Estrada of San Antonio may take the cake with what happened to him in Cabo San Lucas last Thursday. SportFishingMag.com reports that Joe and 2 buddies captured a rare fish. They didn't know what it was at first. They described a bright red, orange, and pink fish that was longer than a person. It was kind of shaped like a mahi, but looked much different, and was swimming around in circles. It turns out they'd landed a luvar, a species that's found in deep tropical waters, where they feed on jellyfish near the surface. Luvars are known to be extremely tasty fish and can grow to be longer than 6 feet long. The one Joe and his friends landed was estimated to be around 300 pounds. After securing the giant fish to the swim platform of their charter boat, they got ready to head back to Cabo, since the boat didn't carry enough ice and they didn't want their catch sitting out in the sun for the rest of the day. They were on their way back in when all of a sudden they hit on a major Dorado bite. Their captain said he'd find another boat to help take the luvar back to Cabo and put it on ice for them while they fished. Another charter boat came by, they transferred the fish, and the skipper said the fish would be waiting for them. Well, that was the last Joe saw of their amazing fish. When they got back to the dock, they found out that the other skipper who had helped them out with transportation had actually hung up the fish, reported it as caught by his crew, snapped photos, and filleted and divided it up among everyone at the marina. That's a bummer.
Easy come, easy go.
You dick!
Well, that's it for the headlines. Now for some tight lines. Here are the latest reports on the best Northern California fishing.
Starting with saltwater, on the North Coast, crab season started off with a bang. Short soaks both inside and outside of Humboldt Bay were all it took to find limits of big dungeons. And boats out of Fort Bragg found plenty of crab too, and even a few salmon. Shore anglers at McCarricher State Park found rockfish and lings. There was great weather and fishing in Bodega Bay last weekend for the crab opener. Boats got limits of crab on short soaks to go with limits of rockfish and nice lings. The crab are good-sized, hard-shelled, and packed with meat, and boats are still making some late-season tuna runs. On Tuesday, we saw a report of a recreational boat that nailed the tuna to 38 pounds.
Outside the gate, plenty of recreational boaters got easy limits of commercial-grade crab and also found some salmon and sand dabs. Charters out of Emeryville Sport Fishing nailed limits of rockfish and crab all week out at the Farallon Islands. The parking lot at Pillar Point in Half Moon Bay has been packed with crabbers, and there's plenty of rockfish to be had too. If you're not in the mood to cook and clean your own crab, you can drop them by Princeton Seafood, and they'll cook and crack them for you at $2.50 a crab. The Pier at Pacifica was a good spot for crabbing from the shore, and it's been crowded.
For a Santa Cruz update, here's Corey from Bayside Marine.
Crab season started off really well, and lots of good-sized crab and lots of limits, and kind of average depth of water, 170 to 220 feet, anywhere from straight out of the harbor all the way up towards Davenport. And there's still some sea bass coming in and some halibut and Humboldt squid off the Moss Landing area in Pajaro, and rock cod and lingcod, just wide open still, lots of big fish coming in on that, and that's pretty much what we got going on right now.
You can reach Bayside Marine at 831-475-2173 or online at baysidemarinesc.com. Boats out of Monterey had a good week with consistent limits of rockfish and crab. Chris's Fishing and Whale Watching continues to run combo trips this week. And good striper fishing continued in the San Francisco Bay and up in the Napa and Petaluma rivers. The Marin Shoreline, the Brothers, and the Whaling Station have been some hot spots. Some sturgeon and nice halibut have been reported this week too.
The Delta is still hot for stripers. Barry Cannavaro of Fish Hooker Sport Fishing has been finding good striper fishing in the shallower water. He's been fishing bait around Middle Grounds, Seal Island, and Grizzly Bay. Fly anglers are hooking stripers around Frank's Tract. And on Monday, we got a report from Delta trolling guru Clive Wands, who hooked 7 fish to 9 pounds off the rock wall in Collinsville. Pittsburgh seems to be a good spot for sturgeon. Quite a few folks from the RodMob community have been hitting the Delta lately. Charles Johnson was out targeting stripers on Friday and reports caught over 30 fish with 3 on the boat, all on cut bait, 11 keepers, kept 5 from 20 to 24 inches. And David Kammerer went out over the weekend and had a beautiful day. David says stripers were biting on live mudsuckers, live minnows, frozen shad, and sardines. John Politis went out sturgeon fishing on Sunday and caught and released a small keeper, 47 inches, that hit on an eel pileworm combo on the high slack tide.
We want to hear from you. Got a fishing report, a tip, a review, a comment on the show? Drop us a message on the RodMob hotline. Then listen for it on an upcoming episode. 662-RODMOB5.
Now let's look at the lakes. NorCal Fishing News reports good bass fishing at Lake Shasta. Shad are being chased to the surface by trout and bass. Bass anglers are enjoying 50 fish days throwing topwater lures. Fishing's been excellent at Lake Almanor. Limits are being found at the Branch and Canyon Dam. Anglers are having success trolling, tossing crawlers, and using roe. And targeting trout in the shallower water at Eagle Lake has been good. Fly anglers have been stripping minnow and leech patterns, and spoons are also producing along the shore. Eagle Lake also got a trout plant this week. Fall fishing is on at Lake Berryessa for both bass and trout, but the trout fishing's been particularly good. Guide Sid Silberberg was out over the weekend and reported trout ruled the day. Trolling 2.5 to 3 miles an hour using shallow diving speed trap lures was the ticket to limits for everyone on Sid's boat.
In the East Bay area, the first plant of Mount Lassen trout up to 4 pounds is coming to Lafayette Reservoir next week. Trout fishing has been good with many limits. There's been a lot of juvenile striped bass seen at Lake Del Valle lately. NorCal Fishing News reported this week the striped bass fishery at Del Valle has gotten a boost, and all the young stripers are a sign of a brighter future for the lake. Right now, larger striped bass are in deeper water, but they'll move closer to the inlets as incoming creeks start flowing with rainfall. In its article on Del Valle, NorCal Fishing News says most anglers utilize Del Valle for its planted trout, but there's an abundant largemouth and smallmouth bass as well as king salmon and kokanee salmon. It's easily the most diverse lake in the East Bay and also boasts of a high catch rate. The trout fishing has been good at East Beach and fair down at the dam, and a recent 10-pounder was caught in Heron Bay. Some catfish and stripers are being caught, and recently a 19-pound striper was landed in Heron Bay on anchovies. Tim Good says trout fishing at Shadow Cliffs is very good. Jerry Guerrero of Sunnyvale caught a 7.8-pound trout for the big trout of the week. The bite is quite good whether you're fishing by boat or shore, and power bait has been the most effective bait.
And in the Motherlode area, at New Melones Reservoir, Glory Hole Sports reports the bass bite's getting better as the shad are staging in 15 to 30 feet of water on main lake points and at the mouths of major creek arms. Catfish are moving shallow and feeding in flats or areas with large chunk rock near deep water. Remember, Melones catfish tend to be fish eaters rather than bottom foragers, so use live minnows, frozen shad, mackerel, or anchovies for best success. Lake Amador is still getting trout plants, and anglers are catching them around the dam where they were planted and in the coves. Power eggs, power worms, and Castmasters are recommended. The third annual Trout Derby at Lake Comanche was last weekend, and we spoke with staff member Shelley this Wednesday for the results.
It turned out great. We were expecting about 125, and we ended up close to 300 entries.
Fantastic. How was the weather?
The weather was perfect. We had no rain. A lot of people, we did more so day of is when they bought into the entry, and the day before we had more sales than we did prior to us actually marketing the event.
So how did anybody get any of the tagged fish?
Out of 100 tagged fish, we had 99 of them tagged at $500. One of them was at $750. Unfortunately, $750 did not get caught, but two of them got caught at $500, two tagged. So we did have two winners of tagged fish valued at $500 each fish.
So what happens to all those tagged fish that are still out there?
Well, we're now sitting. 4 of them have been caught already, 2 the time of the Derby and 2 since our Derby. And if you catch a tagged fish, if you can present it to either North Shore or South Shore Marinas, we are giving away a free cottage night stay here at Comanche, and that's if you catch tagged fish up until December 31st, 2012.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So then how about who came in with like the biggest fish or the biggest stringers, the other stuff you guys were offering?
We did 2 side pots. We had a big fish and a blind bogey. Blind bogey was a new thing that we did this year just to get more winners and more, a bigger pot going and stuff. With the big fish, Brandon Brackmeyer won $738. His trout came in at 9.31, and it was a shore catch. It wasn't even in a boat. He was at South Shore at the point with he had a brass cast master lure.
What other anything else coming up there? Fish plants? Anything we should know about?
Our fish plants, from my understanding, we did plant 3,800 pounds of fish right before the Derby. We also planted 100 of the tagged fish, of course. Mm-hmm. That was separate from our plant. We usually start planting weekly here come up this time of the year, but we're waiting till hopefully the water just dip down a little bit cooler for us and we get the turnover so we can start planting weekly.
Right.
And when we start that up, our trout pond located at South Shore will be getting planted bi-weekly.
What's the best way for our listeners to learn more about Lake Comanche and get a hold of you guys?
One of the easiest ways for sure is Facebook. There's a lot of stuff now online. You can go to Facebook Lake Comanche and online at ComancheRecreation.com.
Okay.
And then to give a call to either marinas, our number and contact information is located on Facebook and online.
At Lake McSwain, the Sacramento Bee reports that there are still a lot of fish in the lake and most anglers are catching limits of trout. Silver and blue Castmasters and gold wedding rings with crawler trailers have been producing limits around the floating outhouse. Bank fishermen have been using purple and other colors of power bait to catch fish at the handicap dock and also by the marina.
In the Sierras, the water's getting low at Donner Lake. You can still scratch out some max or planted trout. At Pyramid Lake, anglers and boats are having more success than those on the shore with flies or spinners. The blockhouse, cattle guard, and popcorn areas have been the best. In the eastern Sierras, as the end to the general trout season approaches, fishing continues at Upper Twin Lakes, June Lake, and Crowley.
Mr. Crowley.
Fish at Crowley Lake are being found in 6 bays, Layton Springs, and along the Green Banks. The ambush at the Lake Fall Fishing Derby continues at Convict Lake. 113 fish have been entered into the drawing that are 14 inches or longer.
Keep us posted. Share your catch, tips, gear reviews, and more on our Facebook page. Facebook.com/RodMob.
On the rivers, we're hearing the steelhead are pretty spread out on the Klamath River. USA Fishing has a report from guide Wally Johnson, who says he's been putting 2 to 3 clients onto 20 to 30 plus fish a day on the Upper Klamath. Steelhead fishing continues to improve on the Trinity River. Lots of 5 to 6 pounders are being caught. Anglers are swinging flies and also doing well with nymphs and egg patterns with an indicator. There's also action side drifting bait or plugs. Water is still low and clear. The Del Loma area has been less crowded than Junction City. The Pitt River is still fishing well, and conditions on the McCloud are good as the season wraps up. The morning and sunset bite has been best. Try October caddis and blue-winged olives. Salmon are still being caught in the Sacramento River. Freeport, Miller Park, and Discovery Park are still seeing action. Lots of 5 to 10 pounders are being landed around the Pioneer Bridge, and we're still waiting for the fall salmon run around Tisdale and Colusa, but the word is that it should be a good one. And areas like Redding and Dunsmuir continue to be good spots for trout. There's still good steelhead action in the low-flow section of the Feather River for fish up to 15 inches. And Western Outdoor News reports outstanding trout fishing last week on the Yuba River. Anglers did well on small dries and caddis, mayfly, and Baetis nymphs from the Highway 20 bridge down to Sycamore Ranch.
On the Truckee River, it looks like guide Matt Coles and guests had an awesome week. He said, in Nevada on the T, it feels like fall has just begun. The trout are very active. East and west of town have been producing. Flows are good through Nevada as well. 450 CFS through Mogul. For this time of year, that's pretty awesome. Well, this is the last week of the season for general trout fishing in the eastern Sierras. Some rivers like the East Walker and Owens will remain open with special restrictions, so be sure to check out the regs.
Woo! Fish! Woo! All right!
Catch of the week.
This week, our podcast artwork comes from Loretta Nunez. Loretta and her husband Armando had a great day fishing out of the Tracy Oasis Marina last Friday and got their limits of some very nice stripers. Thanks, Loretta, for a great report and for posting this week's Catch of the Week.
And now for this week's poll question.
Last week, we asked you about your tackle buying habits and whether you shop for tackle online. Here are the results. 44% of you said you prefer to support your local shops. 44% said you'll shop wherever you find the best deal. And 12% said, yeah, I buy tackle online.
Okay, now for this week's poll question.
There have been a ton of fishing derbies this year throughout Northern California, and we're curious if you guys have ever participated in a derby or are interested in entering one. We'll post the poll question on our website, so head on over to rodmob.com to cast your vote.
Time is running out on our Turkey Day giveaway. Don't miss out on your chance to win a cool prize pack full of swaggin' gear from military hunting and fishing, Hot Huntress, Purific Cup, and more. Entering is a breeze. Just go to our website and click Turkey Day Giveaway.
Gobble, gobble, gobble turkey from Jive Turkey Gobblers.
Upcoming events you won't want to miss. Here's the RodMob calendar.
November 9th through 17th is the Pogo Striped Bass Derby at the VFW Hall in Antioch. To purchase your tickets, contact Steve Martinez at 925-783-8401. Saturday, November 10th is the annual Toys for Troops Kids Bass Fishing Tournament, launching from Russo's Marina on Bethel Island. Each participant is encouraged to bring a new unwrapped toy. Registration forms are available on request at Russo's Marina, and you can also get them at Hook, Line, and Sinker or call 209-852-0157. Also on November 10th, it's the 21st Annual SIFI Dinner. This event's being held at the Folsom Community Center, and it's going to be a full evening of fun, huge raffle, live auction, and tri-tip dinner. You can purchase your tickets online at siffy.org or by calling 209-810-9603. On Sunday, November 11th, salmon season closes from Pigeon Point to Horse Mountain, and the general trout season closes in the Sierra on November 15th. Also on November 15th, the Fisherman's Warehouse is holding 3 seminars. At the Manteca store, Randy Pringle will be talking black bass and stripers. At the Sacramento store, Don Paganelli will be talking about spooning for bass. And at the shop in San Jose, Jay Lopez will be discussing sturgeon fishing. The seminars all start at 6 p.m. Check out fishermanswarehouse.com for more info. November 17th and 18th is the second annual Striped Bass Rattle Trap Only Catch and Release Derby held by Lauritsen Yacht Harbor in Oakley. Also that weekend, the Western Outdoor News Bass Northern Team TOC will be at Clear Lake. Tournament headquarters is the Canoctai Vista Casino. And finally, Trout Unlimited's North Bay chapter is looking for volunteers for Trout in the Classroom, a growing program which helps teachers and students learn about trout and salmon. Volunteers are needed for a few hours a week between December and March. For more on the program and how to volunteer, go to www.nbtu.org. For details on these and other upcoming events, check out our events page at rodmob.com.
Well, that's it for this week. Thanks again to everyone who posted reports. And remember, when you're out on the water, be sure to share your reports with the Rod Mob. Email us at fishon@rodmob.com, or you can always post to our Facebook page.
And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to us in iTunes and leave us a review. If you've got feedback or suggestions, we'd love to hear them. Just shoot us an email at fishon@rodmob.com. Thanks again for supporting the Rod Mob.
And we've got RodMob t-shirts and decals for sale in our new store. Check it out at rodmob.com/gear. Have a great week. Thanks for listening. And until next time, keep us posted.
RodMob.